Imagine a capitalist has just opened a new firm and now wishes to profit. To profit, the capitalist must maximize the difference between their income and their expenses. To create income, a capitalist must hire workers and invest in capital for them to use. But labor and capital both cost money. Since our capitalist has already purchased their firm, we will examine how they hire workers to maximize profits. Let's map how our capitalist maximizes profit on a graph. Our capitalist must pay their workers the market wage to stay competitive. This is constant over any number of hired workers. Our capitalist hires their first worker. This worker produces value for the firm called the worker's marginal productivity. Of course, the capitalist must pay the worker a wage, so this capitalist receives the marginal productivity of the worker minus the worker's wage. This is called surplus value. Surplus value is profit, which the capitalist wants to maximize. The capitalist hires a second worker, and this worker has a higher marginal productivity than the previous worker. Is this worker just a better hire? Not necessarily. Economists call this phenomenon economies of scale. As more workers use a fixed amount of capital, they allow each other to work more efficiently. Average productivity measures how much each individual worker produces. Marginal productivity measures how much the next worker produces. Our capitalist continues to hire workers, reaping the benefits of economies of scale. Profits are great, but our capitalist wants to do better. They hire another worker, but this worker adds less marginal productivity than the previous worker. Is this worker just lazy? What happened? Economists call this diseconomies of scale. It's why you can't feed the world from a flower pot. At some point, the next worker has less marginal productivity than the previous worker. No matter for the capitalists, though, they are still making money. Our capitalist continues to hire workers. While each worker is less marginally productive than the last, and they reduce the average productivity of their fellow workers, the capitalist makes a profit on each worker, so they will continue to hire to maximize profit. However, eventually the next worker hired produces less than market wage, and the next worker hired after that will actually make the entire firm less productive. This is called negative economies of scale. Eventually, you have too many cooks in the kitchen. Since negative economies of scale reduce profit, the capitalist stops hiring when the last worker produces as much as they cost to hire. Notice a few things. Assume the market wage doubles. Conventional wisdom says that the capitalist would need to fire half of their workers to stay profitable, but this isn't the case. If we raise the wage line, only a few workers now cost more than they produce. Doubling the wage only slightly reduced staff. When people say increasing the minimum wage will drastically cut employment, they are wrong. If it did, we would expect a positive correlation between raising the minimum wage and unemployment, yet none exists. The United States has raised the national minimum wage 23 times, including when it was introduced. The year after each increase, the unemployment rate fell 11 times, rose 11 times, and stayed the same once. Additionally, the average productivity of each worker is significantly higher than the marginal productivity of the last worker. This means a worker produces 3 or 4 times more money for their employer than they receive as a wage. This makes sense because the capitalists will only hire workers if those workers produce more money than they cost. Otherwise, they wouldn't turn a profit. That's great for the capitalist, but our workers are receiving far less than they are worth. How do we fix this? Imagine instead that the workers collectively owned the firm and operated it democratically. This is how socialism fundamentally organizes an economy. Each worker wants to make as much money as possible, so they collectively agree to stop letting people join at the highest average productivity. This not only maximizes each worker's pay, but also maximizes each worker's efficiency. Socialist organization increases worker income and makes the economy more efficient. Instead of a single owner deciding when to expand the company or how to pay the bills, every person involved has a voice and a stake in their own economic situation. But what of the owner? What of the workers that were excluded by the co-op that the capitalist would have hired? Socialism seeks to guarantee a basic standard of living for all people, so not having a job shouldn't mean you are homeless or destitute. Even assuming a socialist nation lacks those policies, all other firms are more efficient by the nature of how they use their capital. This heightened efficiency creates more economic opportunities for workers, potentially allowing them to pursue a career they really enjoy, which, under a capitalist economy, would be too unprofitable. When pundits on TV decry minimum wages, workers' unions, or other pro-worker legislation as job-killing or inefficient, they are simply incorrect. Basic principles of microeconomics show that workplace democracy increases economic efficiency and working-class income. These benefits vastly outweigh the relatively small decrease in total employment on a microeconomic scale, if such a decrease translates to the macroeconomy at all. Capitalists do not care about facts, only profits. A socialist economy is more efficient and has far better working conditions than a capitalist economy, even by capitalist theory.